Welcome to Aston Business, SMEs adapting to COVID-19 challenges. I'm Steve Dyson, the journalist presenting this regular podcast for Aston Business School. Our podcasts are focusing on the huge economic disruption caused by the coronavirus pandemic, and we're talking to businesses who've been involved with various programmes at Aston Centre for Growth and elsewhere here at Aston. They'll discuss their challenges, share their experiences and explain how they are adapting to the new business world emerging in the wake of the pandemic. We'll also be interviewing some of Aston Business School's top academics and experts, getting their valuable insight, analysis and advice for SMEs. In the last episode, we looked at how the UK's Balti or curry house sector was dealing with COVID-19, and we were joined then by Professor Monder Ram, the Director of the Centre for Research in Ethnic Minority Entrepreneurship here at Aston. Monder's one of the UK's leading authorities on small businesses in what's often termed the BAME community, and I'm delighted that he's joining us again today. Hello to you, Monder.
Hi, Steve. Good to be with you.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us again. Now, today's episode focuses on what, in the West Midlands, has predominantly become an Asian-led business sector in the 21st century, our renowned corner shops and community supermarkets, often in urban inner cities. Please bear with us as we're carrying out all our recordings remotely online to make sure we conform to the government's safe distancing advice. Speaking to me now is Anwar Karim. Anwar is a retailer in the Lozells area of Birmingham. Hello to you, Anwar.
Hi, Steve.
Thanks for joining us, Anwar. Quick question about you and your business. What's it called? When did it start? And what are your links with the wider retail trade in Lozells?
So our business is our surname, Karim Supermarket, and we've been trading since 1984 in the Lozells area. Used to be called the Handsworth area, now the East Lozells. We've been here since 1984 in the shop, but we've lived in Lozells all our life. We live above the shop, just like most convenience store owners do, and we've lived here with the whole of our family, and thankfully we've gone through the whole education system up to university degrees, and we're still here, and we still work in the shop.
Oh, that's smashing. That's good to hear. Unfortunately, of course, like all of us, we're coping and learning to live with COVID-19. Can you tell me how your shop, and also other shops like yours, how they have responded to COVID-19? Because I guess you're effectively, the small corner shops and the community supermarkets like yours, you've almost acted like a key trader on the front line, haven't you?
We are exactly that. As you know, most corner shops are the first places to get your news information, your gossip, and to know about what's happening within the community. Grassroots levels, what we've known is people that we serve within 30 seconds, we know how they feel, what they want, what they're going through, and we've served them within 30 seconds and the next customer. And once we've got to know the customers, we know what they're feeling, what difficulties they're going through. We can actually gauge how our little community feels. We as frontliners in the convenience store, in the grocery market, have been sort of the hidden shining knights, especially the way most of the traders around here have carried on staying open through COVID-19. Whereas over the weeks and months in March, where the bigger stores were either closing or had massive queues to get to car parks or get in, vulnerable people were having very little access to genuine food. So we carried on through those times. And I think our convenience store and others around the country, around the nation that stayed open were vital for those people. And I think a lot of customers really, really appreciated that we stayed open for them.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but yourself, I think your family's from a Pakistani background.
That's right.
And that's the case with a lot of shops in the Lozells area, is that right?
Majority of the convenience store market is run sort of by the Pakistanis, and now more recently by the Kurdish and the Turkish people that have just come in recently. But over the years, it's dominated by Pakistanis. Our main focal point, our trade has always been we live in the community, we work for the community, and if so, we'll die for the community.
And how, Anwar, have you and the other shops in the Lozells area, how have you tackled this? I mean, from what I understand from going to one or two corner shops myself, the traders often don't have any access to what we call PPE clothing, the protective clothing. I mean, how are you coping with that? What are you doing to protect yourselves?
Firstly, when we started off with this PPE clothing, we were like, where do we actually get this from? Is it some sort of medical store? Do we need to go to a hospital? What is it? We started using our own, what we were selling in our shops, which were our washing up gloves. Weren't good enough, but that's what we could do. That's what we had we could only make at that time. But then luckily we located some of the disposable gloves and some masks. And what we realized is if we're going to buy those disposable gloves for ourselves and a mask for ourselves, why don't we just buy more and just give them out to every single customer that walks through the door? And thankfully, we did that for weeks. We gave disposable gloves and masks to everybody for free. We didn't charge them a penny. And it went, it was just what we feel as human nature, as Muslims. We believe that, to help somebody in need will make a big benefit to us in the hereafter. Also, if we can save one human being's life, it's like saving the whole of mankind. So we managed to give out a lot of free stuff that we could donate it. It's just like charity to our customers. And I think it was a brilliant gesture from us because we've been here for over 30 years. We don't really, it's not all about money for us. It's never always been about the money. If it was, we would have had the money and moved on with our education. And now where my brothers and my family are, we could have moved out the area and done different things. But we chose to stay here. And this is why we stayed here, for the community.
Anwar, it sounds like you've got a great community connection down there.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to ask you about another challenge that I feel I need to ask you about, because we're hearing in the news many stories about what they call the BAME community, Black and Asian community. They seem to have been hit harder in different ways by the COVID-19 illness. And so really, by keeping open to customers, by playing such an important role in the community, it's almost put you and shops like yours more at risk, hasn't it?
We're at a massive risk here, Steve. Sometimes I sit here and I wonder, I look left and right with colleagues that were here a few months ago, and they're not here with us. And I'm talking like my generation, my father's age. He's been working in the shop all his life, and last few years he's retired. A lot of his friends at his age have passed away, and I'm talking people that used to be with him in the local mosques, colleagues that he knew, customers. And also, we've got a convenience store just around the corner, and they had an elderly woman, which is the chap's mother, who used to come in and out the shop and help out. She was retired, but she caught COVID-19 and passed away. So it's quite shocking that we know of people right around the corner from us that have been absolutely devastated. I have a friend of mine who has both of his parents. His mother died on the Tuesday and his father died on the Wednesday. And he said to me afterwards, he goes, I wasn't sure which to bury first and what to do. He was absolutely, ripped apart. And I couldn't say a word for him because, it was at that time where everything was absolutely panic mode. Nobody knew what was going on. Information was filtering through. People were making up stories. The virus seemed to be killing everybody everywhere. We were really reluctant to open the shop. Who do you serve? How do you discriminate? Who can come in? Who can't come in? It was so scary at that time, but, we managed to get through.
Anwar, I'm really sorry to have heard that you've had friends and friends of your family who have passed away. I'm really sorry to hear about that. And in terms of how you're coping, though, who have you and other shops like you, who have you turned to for help or assistance or advice, or even sort of in between funding to help you? Has there been anyone in the government or local government or community who's helping you?
Look, I'm very fortunate where I am, Steve. I'm a community activist, and I have very good networks and links with people. And I've been working in the community for many, many years. I've done I used to be on the local traders association. I've worked with Aston University. I've worked at the council. I have links in those departments that give me and filter information through me to other people. But there are so many other people out there that are not getting no information. For example, you have these small grants now where £10,000 are being allocated towards small businesses. We still have reluctance in the community where people are very reluctant to go out there and put their name towards it, not knowing what the repercussions will be in the next 6 to 8 months, just in case that they, for some reason, are not entitled to it, and somehow the council think that they're doing a fraudulent claim. Therefore, they're just reluctant to touch it. They're just trying to get by right now with very little what they have. It's a very, very difficult situation.
I'm sure it is, yeah. I mean, it's almost like you're a community within that larger community, and there's some reluctance from your own communities to almost accept those handouts.
That's right, because handouts, the words that you just used there, it's sort of like a derogatory term to an Asian community. They would suffer, but you would never ever see them sort of come out there and beg for anything or ask for anything. There's too much pride at stake, Steve, with the people that we live with and we work with. And don't forget, they've been in the community for years. Some of them are absolutely desperate. And one of the things we're doing tomorrow is we're going along, which we've collected food, over £1,500 worth of grocery, which we're distributing in the Lozells area just to families like that. And we're finding some reluctance within the Asian community for people to put their hand up and saying, I'm struggling. And we have the Afro-Caribbean community and we have the white community where we've gone to and they can actually put their hand up and say, look, I could do with that. But our people, we're finding Asian community are finding it really hard to say, I'm struggling, I need some help.
It's a shame. I'm sure that you're one of the people who's trying to tell them that there is aid out there. People are able to take it, and the government can help them in certain circumstances. So I'm sure you're trying to spread that message. Looking ahead, Anwar, how is your shop and other shops that you know? How are you now developing? I know that to start with, you had to almost have your own homemade equipment. But how are you going to cope in the future? Because it's going to be a while before things get back to a real normal. To start with, there's going to be a lot of what they call social distancing and health checks. So how are you adapting things in your shop, and how are other businesses adapting to cope with the in-between states before we get back to business as usual?
I think business as usual is definitely gone now, Steve, because I think what's happened now, the trends have changed. So what we've done physically in our shops is done what every other business has to do, is social distancing, keeping a 2 meters gap and respecting each other. We've got most of that done. We've got our gloves, masks. We've got places. We've put new systems into place, just so making sure that we can sort of avoid any future issues that we have. But the biggest catch that we as small convenience store corner shops have is we're going into a cashless society. We're not seeing cash. Everybody's bringing in cards. We're still having to take the brunt of the cost of paying for each transaction, whereas the customer doesn't have to pay for anything. We then have to take that forward and going into warehouses, markets, we have to start buying everything on card rather than cash. The whole system that we had years ago is starting to change, and I think for the good or the worse, at the moment we're looking back at it. We'll in hindsight we'll look at it in 6 months, thinking was it a good move or not. But for us, it's been a really, really tricky period where we've had to tiptoe around so many little issues that I think what we could have done we would have done it in years. Now we've got to do it in weeks. We've changed so much policies, and I think for the future of our convenience stores, what's happened in the positive side of it is people have now appreciated their corner stores, corner shops, supermarkets locally than they ever had. And I'm talking over the years, people were very happy to go into the big mega stores and do the whole weekly shops and come out. But now they've realized that the convenience store is just as solid, as important market sector that people forgot about. And us as independents, we've offered services from butchers, paying your bills, free ATM machines, stuff like that, that you can pay your gas, water, electric, buy your top up, and you have all these services at a really small convenience store. And I've had customers walk in and said, I only live around the corner and it's only my first time come here to the shop. And I was like, are you serious? And he says, yeah. I says, what made you come here today? And they said, oh, we heard you do fantastic this. You've got massive watermelons that are really fresh, so somebody told us to come here. And wow, what a good shop. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I done right or wrong? Where have these people been? So for some sides of it, for a positive side for myself, my story is we've won a lot of customers back. Our trade's been brilliant because we've tried to keep up with as much stock as we can. And that's because of how much hard work and dedication my family, my staff have put in to going and queuing up into big cash and carries where they're limited to 2 only in cases and frequently going. Online ordering might be a bit further ahead for us, but because of how we are socially and demographically located within this little neighborhood, where we have demographics of a lot of the HMOs, house with multiple occupants, people come and go. We have a youth juvenile centre. We have the alcohol rehabilitation centre. We have all these mental homes. I call them they have issues with the mental health. So we've had majority of our customers are those single independent people where they don't really plan for the future or don't have a massive family. They just up and go, pay as you go people where whatever they want something, they'll just get up and go get it right then. They don't look at the cost or how much it costs. They'll come in and buy it. But going forward with the butcher section and the grocery, maybe we do have a lot of phone orders coming through. And our phone orders have been absolutely going berserk, especially with the meat section. And the Ramadan, it is gone. We have queues out the door at times. We have people coming straight in and going straight back out where they just pick up their meat and go. So a lot has changed for us. And we're just trying to take we're taking it in now and thinking, oh my God, we could do things so much differently. We've been doing this the old way, and I think the old way has to sort of evolve now.
Anwar, it's been tremendous talking to you, and especially hearing how much of a role you've played in the community, and hopefully how that community is now starting to pay you back with their increased loyalty. Thanks so much, Anwar, for joining us.
No problem. Thank you, Steve, for having me, and I really appreciate all the people that are going through all these difficult, especially the times that we're going through. It's absolutely brand new to us, but I feel like if everyone does their little bit in the cog, hopefully we can all make this wheel go round, and hopefully this COVID-19 will be gone, and we'll still be here.
Thank you, Anwar. Monder, thanks for listening to that with us. And to start with, I wanted to pick up on what, in many ways, is an obvious point, but one which is not always widely known or acknowledged. The corner shops and community supermarkets in the West Midlands today, they're run mainly by family businesses, often with a Pakistani background, but they were born, have lived, and were educated in the area where they now work. They're very much a part of the community, aren't they?
Absolutely, Steve. You heard Anwar's really quite moving account of the role of the family, his business, and the pivotal role that they play within the community, within that locality of Lozells, and further afield. And that speaks to a larger story. People like Anwar, South Asians like Anwar, have always been a significant part of the retail sector. That's been true for the best part of half a century. And I think the key point in Anwar's story is, I suppose, the indivisible nature of the economic and the social. We know businesses like Anwar's make an economic contribution. They employ people from the community as well as the family. But what we don't fully appreciate, and like in a way that Anwar sort of says so movingly, is the vital social role that they play around their community. Anwar's business is pivotal to, I suppose, the making connections between disadvantaged, vulnerable communities and the mainstream. He is a conduit for information. He circulates and assists communities that are sort of cut off from the mainstream. And so Anwar's business is more than a shop, it's a hub for the local community.
Absolutely. And in that strong community role that those kind of businesses play, we heard how many convenience stores have been on the front line during the very worst days of COVID-19. Anwar talked about the fact they had no PPE clothing to start with in properties that weren't easy spaces to apply safe distancing, with no high profiles to attract helpful government intervention in their area. But they still went out, they still did a job supplying food and keeping the community spirit going. It's some sterling work they've played, isn't it?
It's almost heroic, Steve. What Anwar's story sort of highlights is how much inner resources, these communities, individuals like Anwar and his family sort of draw on, not only to better themselves, but to integrate, support others less fortunate. You heard Anwar's story about going out providing food parcels to the local communities. And I've heard that so many times from shopkeepers like Anwar around the Midlands and around Birmingham in particular. And it's fascinating, isn't it? They do that because it's part of who they are. It's part of what their business is about. But we very rarely hear about that. There's hardly any recognition of the role of businesses that Anwar's play. And he talked movingly about him producing his own PPE. He was quicker off the blocks than the government did, some would say. And it's incredibly important that businesses like these tell their story and highlight how they are providing the social connection that is so vital to those communities.
I agree with you there. Anwar also talked about people tragically falling victim to COVID-19, and it was heartbreaking, wasn't it, to hear the story about some of the people in his own community who they've lost. And to me, listening to him, this is what I felt makes the sector's experience of COVID-19 even more poignant. These convenience stores, these community supermarkets, they're run by a BAME community who have reportedly suffered in greater volumes from the disease, and yet they're still willing to do it.
As you've indicated, Steve, BAME communities are disproportionately likely to get COVID-19. I think the ratio is sort of 7 to 1. Another factor we need to appreciate is that BAME communities are disproportionately in businesses that are exposed to COVID, the catering sector, the retail sector, where South Asians in particular have traditionally concentrated. Those are the businesses that are effectively on the front line. And I think even Anwar had uses the term front line, and that's a real challenge. And instead of retreating or retrenching, they've done the opposite. They've put themselves out there in harm's way to support the local community. And I think that is heroic.
And yet, once again, this community is a sector which, in many cases, seems to be against accepting any kind of government assistance. We heard Anwar talk about how, although some businesses probably deserve some furloughs when they've had to lay people off, they perhaps deserve some grants at different points when they were really struggling. They won't accept them. They almost don't accept what they call a handout, and yet they do deserve a hand like any other business. Other supermarkets are claiming money. They should be doing that, shouldn't they?
They're entitled to this support, Steve, and it's truly worrying that there's a reticence to avail themselves of it. The story that Anwar said about the reluctance, we've heard that time and time again. We're currently doing a major Economic and Social Research Council project on the retailing sectors as well as other low-paying sectors. We've put that project on hold because retailers are saying to us, we're facing real challenges. And what we did recently was convene a meeting of local retailers and a local authority official. And it was the first time that individuals like those retailers were in front of people with authority making decisions about grants. And after that particular get-together, we sort of helped to disabuse the retailers of the notion that they're not somehow entitled to it or there's a stigma attached. It's theirs by right. And as a consequence of that intervention, 7 business owners received grants. Now, that's a drop in the ocean. We need to ensure that other retailers like Anwar and the businesses that he routinely interact with know about this service. And what I think local authorities need to do is really get out there, appreciate that there are these almost hidden barriers for communities availing themselves of grants, and they need to be overcome by becoming increasing connected to these businesses.
As we begin to emerge from the pandemic, Monder, I was heartened to hear there's the beginning now of a more positive side for the sector. He's certainly very positive in the way that he approaches things. He feels that now the pandemic has effectively reminded people that their local community stores are there. And recently, they're starting to see a rise in trade. He also feels they've been forced by the pandemic to modernise, so they're moving from a cash to a card business. So while there's been a short-term challenge, it's great to see him saying that not just his shop, but also other businesses, they're speeding up changes that were perhaps needed for a decade or more.
I think that does provide a glimmer of hope. It is possible to modernise in this sector. It is possible to deploy IT to become even closer to your market. And it is, importantly, Steve, we shouldn't lose sight of the sort of innate strength of businesses like these, the power of social connection. These businesses are connected to the community and they can leverage that. Anwar has done that with aplomb, and I think others can follow his example.
Overall, our inner cities are lucky, I think, to have such resilient businesses.
Yeah.
How can we make sure that they're helped through returning to a new normal?
There's a few things we can do. I think there's a real obligation on the part of planners and policymakers to reflect the importance of companies like Anwar's in grand-sounding industrial strategies. We've got an industrial strategy for virtually everything. We need to ensure that retailers are part of that. Their role, the role of place and community, has to be a part of industrial strategies in the post-COVID era. And we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that there are really important resources and sources of support out there. Aston Centre for Growth, for example, and there's a whole host of others who are doing their bit to connect with businesses like Anwar and other retailers.
Monder, many thanks for joining us again on today's podcast. It's great to hear from you, and I look forward to hearing more about the work that you're doing with the BAME communities and with their businesses. Many thanks.
Many thanks, Steve.
Yes, a big thank you to Professor Monder Ram, the Director of the Centre for Research in Ethnic Minority Entrepreneurship here at Aston Business School. And also thank you to Anwar Karim, one of the directors of the Karim Supermarkets in Lozells. We'll be back in the next few days with more case studies of how businesses are adapting to the pandemic and with more crucial analysis and advice from academics and experts here at Aston. Aston means business. SMEs adapting to COVID-19 challenges. Thanks for listening.